If there's one thing we can all agree on, it's that the US could use more onshore manufacturing. There's more jobs, there's less costs going into transport across the ocean. Like, the benefits are innumerable, and people love buying goods that are made here in our own country. So when Nissan invited me out to Tennessee to go tour the Smyrna assembly plant and the Decard powertrain plant, I was so excited I can't explain it to you guys. Personally, I love factory tours more than anything, and I've been to a few of them, but I have never been on a factory tour where they said, take every picture and every video you want. We don't want any editorial like oversight or anything like that. You can post anything you see. And that's exactly what this video is, a full carte blanche video of myself and a bunch of other journalists from outlets all over the country getting to take an unfettered tour of Nissan's factory. So I don't need to say anything else about this other than thank you to Nissan for the opportunity to tour these plants and share them with you guys. I hope you appreciate it as much as I do. It's better than how it's made to me because we got to see like up close and technical details and ask questions. Mind-blowing. And the tours, like each tour was literally maybe 3 or 4 hours, and I was like, guys, come on, can I have like a 40-hour tour? Like, we go through each step piece by piece, and they literally told me to come back and we could do it. And I don't know if anybody like actually wants me to share that much detail, but oh my gosh, I couldn't have had a better time in my life. So let's jump right in.
Here is where it all starts, the welcome center at the Smyrna assembly plant. We walked in the door and were greeted with this miniature, and I say miniature, but that was gigantic. And this was just a cool shot. I love the Nissan Infinity sign right here in the welcome center with this Datsun 1200. That was very cool. And then they made us suit up for the tour, full PPE. One of the very first things we saw once we got on the golf carts was that line following robot on the right, moving racks of car parts from one station to another. And then on the right were all 4 of the bumpers from the cars or the vehicles they're currently producing. I love this shot of the hallway because if you look up, you're actually looking at bodies and everything moving in the overhead section of the factory right beside the walkway we're on. And now we're actually driving into the body shop where you can see cars moving station to station as they go through their body assembly and get things done to them, like doors put on, the hatch put on, the hood put on, and they look pretty complete at this stage here. And then heading down this aisle, we can see one of the inspection stations or inspection tunnels where the car is going through, and I think they 3D scan and laser scan the entire car inside this tunnel right here just to make sure everything meets spec and is absolutely perfect before the vehicle moves on down the line. That's why it has this light tunnel, allows vision systems and the inspectors to make sure the car meets all of its quality control. Everywhere I saw carts full of stamped parts like this, I had to shoot some video of it because it's just so incredible to see the scale and the number of parts that are all over this assembly floor here. And speaking of stamping, that is where we're headed right now to go see one of the largest stamping presses in the world. We just happened to show up here at the perfect time while they were moving or unloading one of the test dies out of their test stamping press that's in the background there. So the press that you're looking at right now is not one of the largest in the world. It's actually the little one that runs the tool and dies so they can make sure that everything meets spec and quality before they stick it in the big 5-stage press, right? So they'll do little runs on this press, and the big press is behind us. Now, it was very cool to watch them moving these tools. This is a 40 metric ton gantry crane they're picking up these tools with. And here is one of those tools. You can see the tonnage written on the side there, I think. I'm pretty sure that's what that is. It says upper 6.3 and lower 6.8. And that's probably what that much cast metal has to weigh. It seems like it would be outrageous. So there's another shot of the test press and the giant gantry, and this is one of the largest presses in the world. Take a look at this behemoth. You can see all the stages right there. It's one of the world's largest servo-driven presses, and it's right here in the USA. If you don't know what a stamping press is, it's basically taking flat sheet metal into press 1 on the far side here, and what's coming out over here by these robots and on this unloading conveyor belt are finished body parts. It's incredible to see. Smyrna was Nissan's first US manufacturing plant, and it's been here longer than you think. It actually opened in June of 1983. It sits on 884 acres of land, and it's 6 6.4 million square foot. This place is gigantic. Like I said, they're building the Rogue, the Pathfinder, the Murano, and the Infiniti QX60, and next year the Infiniti QX65 in this plant. Right here you can actually see the parking sensors and wiring harnesses going into the front bumpers. Sure looks a lot easier watching these guys do it on brand new parts than it is when we're fixing stuff that's been on the road for 10 years. It's really cool to watch it all move around on these conveyor belt track systems. And in the floor right here, you can see those lines, the line following robots follow. It's so cool to see. I love seeing robots. You know, they're near and dear to my heart. They make my heart warm. And right here you can see the robots are handing the workers parts for them to assemble. So parts are coming in from overheads, from robots. Here, entire cars are making the transition from overhead down to the floor for the workers to start installing parts. And look at this, you can see that cute little robot with LiDAR in front looking for obstacles around it as it moves parts so that people don't have to do it. I mean, all of these shots of robots are just so cool. And then look at that, people are still doing the work too. So robots are not taking your jobs, they're just making your life easier. Those were entire carts full of steering wheels, which was very cool to see. Here's front ends, I think. It could be a rear cradle, could be a front end, getting prepped for its mating with the car. And then we jump over to final inspection. Now the doors aren't on right there, but we are looking at powertrains going in. The actual mating of the vehicles is coming up in the next few seconds here. I've never seen so many engines in one place in my life. It was incredible to see rows and rows and rows of engines stacked up and ready to be dropped into vehicles. And it's just in time manufacturing. These are about to go in a car. And moments later, the cars are coming out of another inspection tunnel for QA, where they're being 3D scanned, checked by inspectors, and all of the final checks are being done before they get driven into, well, the very final test where they actually start these things up. They're going to start them here in a second. You'll see the lights turn on, and then they drive into the next section. Before we head over to the very last stage in the assembly process, I wanted to watch a couple more Nissans be born. It's really cool watching them start up for the first time right here, get driven over to the final section where they get dynoed, diag tested. I mean, so much goes into this that you wouldn't expect. They are dyno testing every single one of these cars with what's basically a full run-up and road test before they head out the door. Coming off the line right now is the brand new Rock Creek edition, which looks really cool with its ATs and those black wheels. And they had things like hill descent control, so you can kind of go out and do a little bit of off-roading with the Rogue. And then you can see an entire lineup of Infinitis back there in the background. And we are headed off to the last step here at Smyrna. Look at that. Finished vehicles all over the place. And this is just another day for the employees at Smyrna. Speaking of the employees, there are 7,300 of them working at this plant. And when they combine all their effort, this plant can crank out 640,000 vehicles a year. And they've made 15 million since the plant opened. So here's another one of the QA inspection tunnels here that's just absolutely covered with lights. If you've ever done PDR, you understand the vertical and horizontal lights over the car. If you see any waves in the light at all, it makes it very easy to spot imperfections, dents, problems with quality, and another line following robot brake. Look, I couldn't shoot enough of these if I had to. Like, I could record robots moving around, following lines all day long. So it's super fun to see. They also play music. It kind of sounds like the Super Nintendo theme. It's not, but to warn people that the robot is moving, they play cute little tones like that, kind of like the Japanese subway. And this is one of my favorite parts of the entire tour. This is the dyno test. So if you see that orange grate down there at the bottom that's popped up, that pops up out of the floor and captures all of the exhaust from the running vehicle and pipes it out of the factory. And I'm sure that goes through like scrubbers and recapture devices and all of that. Obviously, this factory is Energy Star partnered as well, so I'm sure they're probably processing the exhaust, but watching the vehicles run through their diagnostic sessions, plugged into the computer, and of course they're capturing all that data as well, was incredible. Monitor with the yellow screen up there in the ceiling is telling the driver what to do, what RPM and what speed to accelerate to, when it's time to slow down, and the OBD2 diag is going on at the same time and recording all of the parameters that they need to know from the vehicle.
So that was the Smyrna assembly plant, and that was incredible. I don't even think a 40-hour tour would scratch the surface of what happens in that plant. Like, it's so big, the corridors are nearly a mile long. That's why we were riding around on golf carts, because it would take hours to walk through the plant. We're talking like square miles of assembly floor. And it was very, very cool to see all of this happening in Tennessee, see all the local workers. We stayed in Nashville and we're like right beside Nissan Stadium, and we're driving Nissans to the Nissan plant. It was really a very cool experience. And then I got to take a quick overnight nap, and we headed to the Decard powertrain plant, and we got to go see how the engines that we know and love are made right here in America.
Walking into the Decard engine plant felt like I was home. They had this VQ on display. They had the Endurance 5.6 on display right there, and they said that's the last one ever produced. I guess that's the last regular production one, because they're still making them in case there are any warranty issues. We had a little slide there showing all the engines that are made in this plant. The 3-cylinder variable compression, the 4-cylinder variable compression, the V6, what's left of the VQ line, of course. A whole lot of different engines are actually being made and assembled right here in this plant. So that was some random heads that I just saw as we were driving by. I don't know which heads they were, but it was very cool to see those. And we basically headed straight down the main hallway, checking out all the overhead robots moving parts around, which are incredible to see. You can see these robots even have elevators. That's what those little towers are. And then we went straight to their measurement room right there. And we actually started the tour right here at the Sumitomo die stamping press. And this was wild to see. They are preheating solid bars of metal, and then they pull them into the stamping press, and you can see through those windows right there, it is stamping crankshafts. And this is a multi-operation press. The crankshaft gets moved through the operation. You actually see it pick up and slide over. And by the time this press is done doing its magic, it's taken a solid piece of steel and turned it into a basically like a rough crankshaft that's headed to machining. Another epic gantry crane overhead. I love big gantry cranes, and this place, well, Nissan has some of the biggest ones. I really wanted to get up close and personal with this press, but we had to keep a distance for safety reasons. Here is some of the raw billet coming in, and you can see the markings on the end. The different colors are different grades and different uses for those billets. Speaking of raw material, I don't know if you saw that pile of raw aluminum ingots sitting there. That was really cool to see. It looked like a pile of silver. And 98.9% of waste generated at this plant is recycled. And that's 19,000 pounds of aluminum reused every day. Wild. Just piles of aluminum like that. And where does all that aluminum go? It goes right here into the cylinder block casting machine. So they're pouring up to 1,000 pounds of molten aluminum into the top of this machine, and it is casting, basically finished. I mean, they're rough, but cylinder blocks that are just going to get machined and then assembled shortly after this step. So it was really cool to see the robots pulling cylinder blocks out of this casting machine right after they're cast and moving in and out, just non-stop operations of here's a block, here's a block, here's a block. It was really cool to get to see that run. Glimpse of that robot arm starting to manipulate some semi-finished cylinder blocks after they've come out of casting, and they're heading through all of the machining steps to get them ready to assemble. So it looks like a VQ. It could have been a 3-cylinder, but kind of looks like a VQ to me. And then it's back to the QA lab to see the Nikon X-ray and CT scanner. This is a dual source X-ray and CT machine they scan the blocks with to make sure they're perfect coming out of manufacturing. That is a lot of cylinder heads, so I shot some video of it. Like, where else do you see that many cylinder heads? And of course, another line following robot, just making me happy as it makes its way through the factory. So, more cylinder blocks. We just got to see engines and engines and engines, which was incredible. Now on to engine assembly, though, which is what you guys want to see. Here's the flywheels going on a VQ. And one of the coolest things of all time, watch this robot cell right here. It's doing a fully automated tightening sequence right here on the flywheel. So the bolts are already installed. It laser scans. It figures out the position of the bolts and the flywheel. And then you'll see it rotates its head to match the bolts and then tightens all of them at once. It does the initial torque, the back off torque, and probably the angle torque as well in one step. I wouldn't doubt it if a robot like this saves 1 million man hours a year. This takes time. And then they took us to the teardown shop after the dyno run. So there's some variable compression rods with full carbon fiber Datamite torque wrenches right there. Those data log every reading and save it to that handheld. This is the dyno cell where they're absolutely torture testing these Nissan engines to make sure they meet quality specs. And then we get to see some connecting rods on these special trays moving through the assembly process right there, and a little human robot standoff, which was very cool. Like if you walk in front of the robots, they stop. So that one had stopped right there to let some people pass, and then it just continues about its day, which is always funny to watch, right? If you stand in front of them, they'll sit there. And again, don't worry, it's not a bunch of robots. There are 1,800 employees at this plant, and they run 4 shifts here as well. They are building engines non-stop. Nissan can produce 1.4 million engines here a year, and they've made 19 million so far. But this was one of the coolest parts to me. This is the timing cover assembly, and the end effector on this Fanuc robot was wild. If you see all those hoses, there are bolts being sorted and dropped into those hoses in order. Then they go onto a tray. The end effector picks up all the bolts and installs all of them into the timing cover at once. So the sealant's being applied, all the bolts get put in, and then it drops the timing cover on right here in this operation, and then tightens every single bolt, something that takes 30 minutes in real life, right? It takes time to install a front cover and do it right. This thing knocks it all out in an instant.
Well, there you have it. That was my tour of the Decard assembly plant as well. They have their training center on site there too, and they let me have a ton of fun. While other people were assembling engines, they let me do things that I love more than anything. Automation, they had their cobots there, and they let me do some teach cycles with the pendant. I'd never actually gotten to use a cobot up close. They use a lot of Fanuc robots, the actual robots and the cobots, right? Cobots are just slower and are safer working in the same space with a human, and then the big robots, right? If one of those things spins around, like, they're not made to work beside humans. They sit in safety cells for a reason. But obviously, I loved seeing all the automation. They had like CNC demos in the training center and PLC demos, which many of you that have been watching the channel forever know I grew up doing like HMI and PLC stuff with my dad. So that was super fun. I'm glad I got to detour and work on that stuff instead of the engines, which were still cool to see, right? They were working on the variable compression engines, which really cool to see all of that up close. But with that said, huge thank you to Nissan for letting me see all of this. And they also mentioned that we might get to go back and take a tour of the Nash Nissan like collaboration zone in the basement, where they keep a bunch of rare Nissans that you've probably never seen before. So that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to head on over to shop WatchJRGo.com for cool shirts, not like this. And please like, share, subscribe, do whatever you want to do, and I will talk to you next time. There you go. There's half of a Titan right there. The greatest V8 ever made. There's so many VK56 parts in this garage, it's not funny.